Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the show. I've got a very special guest here with me tonight. It's someone that I've always looked up to when it comes to the commentating in real life motorsport, and someone that I've got a lot of respect for. And you might recognise him from what's on YouTube live streams, especially on the GT World Challenge series, or even if you're at the track, you might hear him on the PA system from time to time. And Ryan Myrehn joins me now. And Ryan, first off, thank you so much for giving some of your time and joining the show, and I really appreciate it.
Hey, Ryan, pleasure to be with you. I've enjoyed our interactions on social media over the years, and fun to get to jump on with you now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've been busy with preparation for the Daytona 24, and obviously the Roar before the 24 weekend, this weekend as well, which takes place. But I think first off as well, it's the same question that I always ask people: how did your introduction to motorsport come about? Was it through family, or was it just one of those things that you picked up, maybe watching TV, or was it word of mouth through maybe a family friend as such?
Well, I grew up in Indianapolis, and if you know anything about Indianapolis, you probably know we have a pretty big race here every May. So it's kind of in the water when you grow up in Indy. You don't have much choice but to at least be aware of racing, and then it helped that my father was a big race fan as well, and I have some really early memories, maybe 3 or 4 years old, sitting and watching IndyCar races with him, eventually NASCAR races with him. So it was there from the very beginning. I was always interested in the sport. And as I got older, I think that interest only grew. Here in the States, we had a cable channel called Speed Vision, which became the Speed Network or Speed Channel. And as I got into middle school and high school, I was constantly watching that channel just to see what kind of wacky motorsport might be on today. And that's how I discovered things like DTM and V8 supercars, certainly sports car racing as well. I remember being in middle school and just remembering that sometime around this time of year in January, there's some strange race where they go for 24 hours and multiple drivers jump in the car over the course of those 24 hours down in Daytona. And I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but I thought it was awfully cool. So when January rolled around, I was always flipping the channel on, just hoping that that was the weekend that the Rolex 24 happened. And it just grew from there. By the time I was in high school, I was watching any type of motorsport you could imagine, especially considering I was considering going to university at the time to study broadcasting and hopefully break into that field with a focus on motorsports. So I would watch as many things as I could, try to learn as much as I could, and that continues to this day. I don't watch much TV that isn't sports and racing in particular. So it's been a passion for a long time, and the passion only continues to grow.
Yeah, and you mentioned you went to the university to study broadcasting. Do with that do they show you what's involved in broadcasting, or so basically for anyone that might want to do commentating, for example, or do media as such, do they give you training on how to do that sort of thing? So, for example, if you, you have to maybe interview a person, did they help you with that sort of skill and practice?
To a degree, yes. I think a lot of it was learning on the job. The university that I chose, DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana, so just about an hour, or a little less than an hour west of Indianapolis itself. I chose it in part because it had a fantastic student-run college radio station. And I remember taking my tour of the campus, seeing this radio station, and being told, if you want to be on air, chances are you can sign up and be on air your first week on campus. And that ultimately proved to be true. So a lot of it was learning on the job. I did have some classes that were broadcast focused as well, where a lot of it came down to things like ethics and how to think about the way you approach the job from a journalistic perspective, philosophically. But I would say the thing that benefited me the most from the college experience was the fact that I was able to get on air from the first week on campus, make a ton of mistakes, because this is one of those things you can read about it, you can get instruction, but ultimately, in my experience at least, the only way to get better is to actually get the practice. It's a bit like being a racing driver. The only way to get faster is to be in the seat. So I think the same is true with wearing a headset. And I was able to get on air from a pretty early stage. I was able to start up a motorsport specific talk show that I did for a couple of years while I was there. A lot of practice doing broadcasts for stick and ball sports. And that then really served me well as I tried to move off and make a career out of this.
Yeah, and with doing your own show as such, like you mentioned, was that something that you could use? So, like, if you wanted to send away your work to maybe future employers or broadcast companies that are maybe looking for people to help out. Did you think do you think that helped in a way to try and maybe kind of, I don't know how to describe it, maybe get your foot in the door as such?
Yes, definitely. There's no question that I was able to take recordings of my play-by-play or my talk show hosting or whatever, put a little demo reel together, and then when the time came to reach out to potential employers, I at least had something I could show them and say, look, I've kind of done this job before. This is approximately what it would sound like if you hire me. And I remember being quite proud of my demo reel at the time, although listening back to it now, and it makes me cringe a little bit. But I guess that's part of the progression of this profession. You know, what you're proud of 5 years ago probably doesn't sound so great 5 years later. At least that's the hope. You're always trying to improve one year to the next, one broadcast to the next, quite frankly. So that definitely was important in helping to get my foot in the door. And then I have to give credit as well to a service called the STAA, Sportscasters Talent Agency of America, which sounds a little bit fancier than it really is, but basically I paid them $15 a month and they sent me job openings in sports media, whether it was television or radio, throughout the U.S. And through that, I sent out a bunch of demo reels, a bunch of resumes, and finally got a call from Brad Boyer, who was the station manager at KRES Radio in Moberly, Missouri. And he's the one who took a shot on me, gave me a chance, and hired me for my first on-air job.
And I guess as well, with getting a call such as that, I get as well, you must, like you say, it makes you feel proud because of the work you put in. And it's one of those things as well that, yeah, it's hard to explain, but it's one of those things that when someone kind of like takes you under the wing, if you like, and gives you a shot, it must feel make you feel proud. And I think with that opportunity as well, did it lead to any opportunities or opening doors to other broadcast opportunities?
Yes, I mean, it was definitely a starting job, and it was pitched to me as such. Brad was quite open that he didn't expect me to come and live there and work there for the rest of my career. In fact, one of my first conversations with him was about the various people who had worked for him over the years and what they had gone on to do. But it was a really good first job because I did just a little bit of everything working for this radio station. Really, it was a cluster of radio stations in small town Missouri. And I did everything from, I was our website manager. I had a little bit of experience doing that from a ill-fated and short-term work in the PR field just out of college. And so I was able to help out with that. I was a country music DJ during the week, and I did things like reading the farm reports. I did things like reading the obituaries on the air, a little bit of everything. But then I got a chance to go out and call football games, basketball games, things like that in the evenings, covering local high school sports in a part of the country that didn't have much media coverage. So we kind of were the big show in town, and it grew from there. It also helped that there was a local dirt track not too far away from where I worked, which had been dormant when I moved to town, but picked up new ownership when maybe a couple months into my time in Moberly. And so I then volunteered my time helping out with the public address system out there. So at least I was getting a little bit of practice covering motorsports, doing interviews, doing the public address occasionally as the play-by-play announcer out at that short track. And then also, again, credit to Brad, who gave me a chance to create a motorsport-specific talk show that I did weekly out there as well. And all of those things then culminated in getting all that practice, getting better at the job, putting together a better demo reel. That led me to the next step, which was a small radio station in Michigan, which was sports only. I did a daily sports talk show there in addition to doing play-by-play. And then crucially, while I was there, that job was a little less strenuous from a time perspective as my first one had been. And I had some time on the side to pick up a side project, and that's really where the crucial step in my motorsports career came, where I reached out, just sent an email completely at random to John DeGeese from Sports Car 365. This was back in 2015. I pitched him on a podcast where he wasn't going to have to pay me anything. I just wanted a chance to do something in sports car racing. And for some reason, sight unseen, he decided to go for it. And that led to me doing that on the side while still doing my job in Michigan. A year later, I moved down to Indianapolis and was working for John more or less full time. Although he did his best to take care of me, but it was a situation where I was having to move back in with my parents and live in the basement for a little while just to make ends meet. But ultimately, that job then introduced me to the right people in racing broadcasting, and one thing led to another. And here we are talking all these years later, and I'm about to head down to Daytona to broadcast the Rolex for the second year, which is unbelievable and a dream come true.
Yeah, I'm talking about opportunities as well. I mean, when it comes to motorsport, just check it. I'm checking my notes here. I believe, if I'm correct, your first opportunity was a radio show host for ESPN. Was that talking about or cover about motorsport as well?
No, that was not. So that was the job up in Michigan that I referenced a few moments ago. So it was a local radio station that had an affiliation with ESPN Radio, and mostly we took their national syndicated coverage, but for an hour a day on weekdays, we had a local show. It was my job to host it, to produce it, to book the guests, everything, 5 days a week, which may not sound like a whole lot, but when you're a one-man band, I have to say, trying to keep that show going was challenging. And I did talk a little racing on it, but primarily I was talking about the sports that mattered in my local market, which was a small town called Marquette up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right on Lake Superior, and they cared a lot about their local hockey team. They cared a lot about the Detroit Tigers baseball team, the Detroit Lions NFL team. A lot of Green Bay Packer fans up there because it's quite close to Wisconsin as well, just for example, and then college sports too. So that was really what the focus was up there, but I think having that ESPN logo in my email signature when I reached out to John, I didn't claim to be anything that I wasn't, but I also didn't quite make it clear just how small time I was at the time, and I hoped that ESPN logo would do a little bit of the talking for me, and I suspect it might have helped.
Yeah, and moving to Sports Car 365 as well. But like you were talking about your time there. Did you find when you were doing work for them or covering stuff for them, did you find that it helped in a way again to gain further opportunities doing other things in motorsport? Obviously, Sports Car 365, like it says, they're mainly focused on sports cars, but I think they've started looking at other stuff as well. That doing I think they do car reviews now, but I would need to double check that. Did they do anything like that during your time there?
Yes, although I was not involved in that. John has some people who car reviews is what they do, and so they are the ones that file those stories. While I was with him, he also branched out into covering Formula E for a time and had a sister website, eRacing 365, that I contributed to a little bit as well over the years. But to the original question, it was the crucial moment in my career. Racing is very insulated. It's difficult to break in. Once you're in, people are very welcoming, and it's amazing how things can snowball. Opportunities continue to pop up, and as long as you don't make any kind of grievous mistake or alienate the wrong person, then once you're in the circle, once you're in the bubble, things can spiral in a great way. But trying to break in is the challenging part, and it took one person to take a chance on me, and ultimately that was John. And I give him a ton of credit because it started off as doing this podcast weekly. Next thing you know, one of his writers left for a great opportunity, so now he needed someone who could help with some writing. And while I had not really done any writing from a journalism perspective, I did write a little bit for my college newspaper for maybe a semester or two, but not anything I took super seriously. But I said, all right, well, we'll figure it out. I'll see if I can help. And that then led to me getting to travel more, getting on site, and ultimately that's really where the opportunities opened up, doing broadcast and working even outside of sports cars as well. Like you said, that's the focus might have been sports cars for Sports Car 365, but my travel for that often put me on a race weekend the same weekend as IndyCar. Let's use Long Beach or Detroit as an example, where IMSA and IndyCar share the weekend. Back then, Pirelli World Challenge used to race on IndyCar weekends quite regularly. And so that then made it possible for me to start working for IndyCar Radio. I had a little relationship with them going back to my time in college, having shadowed the IndyCar Radio group during the Indy 500 in 2011 as a college student. I had just graduated, actually, and stayed in touch with them. Next thing you know, now I've got this job where I'm traveling to these racetracks. They don't have to pay to travel me. I'm already there. They can just pay me a day rate, and occasionally they'd have an opening, and that's really what got me on air for the first time, starting with an IndyCar race down at Barber Motorsports Park, and then later in 2017 up at Road America, and it's just grown from there. So I think if you're looking for one pivotal moment in the career, it certainly was John taking a shot on me at 365, and that then brought me into the motorsports world on a full-time basis, and it's just been unbelievable how things have grown from that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously you've come a long way since that time. You've got loads of opportunities now, and looking at the list as well, I believe one of your opportunities at that time was, if I let me check, I think one of your opportunities was it AWS Deep Racer or something like that.
Yeah, that was one that came totally out of left field, but it was the biggest surprise probably in my career, but it's been such a pleasant one. To back up, AWS, Amazon Web Services, they were unveiling this product called Deep Racer, which was a 1/18th scale. It looked like a remote control car, but it had been modified so that computer programmers could train them to drive autonomously. And really, the focus wasn't about the autonomous driving per se. It was more about teaching these developers how to use a certain type of AI, machine learning, to train, in this case, this car. But there were so many use cases that made sense in the business world, and this is where AWS saw this as an avenue to bring people in through this car and this competition that surrounded it, teach them about machine learning, and then teach them about the ways that AWS and its services then could go and help their business as well through using AI and machine learning. And it's tough to explain, but it turned into this wonderful side gig effectively, where I would travel to a number of these events that they had anywhere around the world. I mean, I think they sent me to places like Stockholm and Amsterdam, London, and then a bunch of places around the U.S. as well. And I did this for a handful of years, going to these events and just trying to make it sound like it was a big deal. And it was to the people who competed in it. And I met a lot of great people from it, made some wonderful friends, and especially during COVID when the rest of my work really dried up, they took this competition remote and virtual and kept me working through the downtime, which was really, really important. So I have to say a big thanks to AWS because they quite literally kept the lights on in my house with the work that they gave me during the pandemic. very, very strange and unexpected little twist in my life. And it actually all comes back to the racetrack because a gentleman from AWS, CJ Moses, who's done some racing in SRO America, he heard that they were doing this, heard that they needed an announcer for it, and he knew me through SRO and threw my name out there to them, sight unseen, and one thing led to another, and it led to a wonderful 6 or 7 years of doing this on the side around my full-time motorsports career.
Yeah, it's a good thing as well, and obviously you talk about the pandemic as well. You took up a bit of commentating as well for a Assetto Corsa Competizione. Just to, I guess, this is the time. Obviously, this is when the pandemic first kind of came around, and all the real life motorsport series were pretty much not shut down, but they were kind of like every racing series paused the like basically activities because of the pandemic. And I guess it's what quite a lot of series they done it at the time when the COVID kicked off. There was lots of series putting on stuff for real life drivers. Just to get that racing fix, or even help commentators kind of in a way kind of stop them getting rusty in a way. Did you find from doing commentating on Assetto Competizione, did you find that helped you kind of not improve your skills as such, but can you keep you in shape, if you like?
Well, I think it did improve my skills because up to that point, I had almost exclusively been a pit reporter. And so this was a situation where I was doing more play-by-play, although I was working with Kyle Heyer, who had a sim racing broadcast company that he was running out of his college dorm room at the time. And he really led everything because he was handling all the production and things like that as well. And I could just chip in with real world knowledge and things like that, talk about the people who were competing in it because I knew them better than he would have at that point. But Kyle was phenomenal and remains an excellent broadcaster as well. He does a lot of work for Grid Life these days, but has done some broadcast with SRO America, including working with us at the Indy 8 Hour. Let's see, that would have been in 2024. But he's done some other races too. And all of this to say, this was a big moment for me because I think it gave me a chance to show my bosses at SRO that I could be used in the booth if they ever had an opening, and which I always wanted to try. I was quite happy as a pit reporter, but it was something I'd never really had the chance to do and wanted to see how it would go. And I think that was maybe proof of concept for them that could be an option down the road.
And you talk about SRO as well. Obviously, to start off with, you were a pit reporter, like you mentioned. What did you learn from doing pit reporting? Obviously, you speak to drivers, you speak to team members, maybe during a race weekend or even during a race. Obviously, what sort of things did you do during that time as a pit reporter? Did you have to go around asking like pre-race or pre-race weekend as well? Sort of doing interviews to see what how they think the race weekend's going to go. How's the car looking for the race weekend?
Of course, yeah. A big part of the job and the reason that I think it's so important to travel the broadcast crew, if at all possible. I understand in this day and age a lot of things have to be done remotely from a cost perspective, and it is feasible, but what you lose out on is the chance to interface with the people that you're covering, and the best nuggets that you get for a broadcast, the best little human interest stories are always, it seems like, things that come up serendipitously just in a passing conversation that you might be having with someone while you're walking around the paddock, and you can't do that from home. I would say, again, it's amazing how things just build on themselves in a career, and the time I spent as a journalist writing for 365 really helped me with pit reporting in particular, but what we're talking about here as well, where you're walking around, you're filling up your notebook with items. Maybe you're going to write a story about it. Maybe you just publish them in notebook
you open
form.
YouTube, I saw some Japanese in the
But what I found is the things that were interesting, that would make a notebook or would make for a good story on the website, those are the same kind of stories that you want to tell on air. And so I felt like if I just took that same philosophy from being a print journalist to my broadcasting, then I would be well served. So yeah, on a race weekend as a pit reporter, a lot of times your job is to add those little anecdotes like that during a pit stop or during an interview. Most of the time when I'm doing an interview in the pits, it's probably a conversation I've had with the driver or crew member or whatever at some point in the weekend before. They've already told me this story, but let's hear it again, but this time on air, things like that. And then when it gets difficult is, if somebody's having a bad day, you still have to go and do the interview. They've crashed out of the race. You got to ask them what happened. They run out of fuel. You got to ask the strategist, how did this happen? How did you end up in this position? And those can be uncomfortable and aren't always a lot of fun. But I do like pit reporting. I love being in the thick of it and getting to introduce the audience to some of these personalities through the interviews. And it's so amazing that in our sport, completely contrary to just about any other sport I can think of, you get to hear from the athletes during the event. And that I think it sets us apart. And if it's done well, you get tremendous insight. And thankfully, the folks that I work with, by and large, definitely in sports car racing, and to a lesser degree, but still pretty good in IndyCar racing. They're good characters. They understand what's going on, and they're willing to play the game as well.
And you talk about with the drivers as well in teams that maybe if they're having a bad race or something's not going their way. How do you approach that sort of thing? Obviously, you've still got to ask questions, but is there a different way that you prepare to approach them to ask the difficult questions? Is it a different approach from, say, like a team or drivers won a race? Is it where you've got to be a little bit more cautious?
Yeah, I think this is where relationships really matter. It's difficult if you're a newcomer, but if you're going up to someone that you've known for years, they know why I'm coming up to talk to them. They understand the job that I'm trying to do. They also understand that I'm not trying to put them in an uncomfortable position. But they also understand that the people watching at home want to have the answers to this, and that's the nature of the game. So I think a lot of it has to do with you've built that relationship, you built that trust over the years. There's a lot you can do just with the way that you approach someone. And, if they've had a bad day, don't show up and smile a bunch when you turn up with a microphone. That's not going to make them feel good about the situation. And conversely, when you're greeting your friend who just won a race in victory lane, then yeah, put a big smile on and laugh with them, enjoy it. You just have to adapt your own disposition and demeanor to the situation, and learning how to do that. It just takes time, takes practice. And look, I've messed it up before as well, where I wish I could have handled an interview here or there a little bit differently, but that's part of the game, and you try and get better for the next one.
And then talking about SRO as well, and obviously you call the races alongside GT World Challenge, GT4 America. What else is it? The TC America alongside Calvin Fiss, and in my opinion, I think both of you make a great team, because you've kind of got that. I don't know if it sounds, I know it probably sounds like probably a normal thing or an unusual thing to say, but you and Calvin, I've noticed you've got that kind of you bounce off each other. You've got a great chemistry. How is it working with Calvin? I mean, I've always had respect for him. He's a great guy, and how do you find working with him? Do you find, obviously, I've heard about in the past, like other commentators, for example, Murray Walker and James Hunt, they were notorious for not getting on, but they had that kind of they still had that good chemistry.
Yeah, it somehow worked for Murray and James, didn't it? Look, I'm glad that it comes across that way for you, because I have to say I love working with Calvin. He is so delightful off air, a wonderful teammate, great person to spend time with, and we spend a lot of time with one another. But you will never question his preparation. He turns up with a full notebook of notes on everyone. He's constantly walking the paddock, trying to get down to the nitty-gritty, trying to get the details. And I think the thing he brings better than anybody else, certainly that I've worked with, and I'd put him up against anybody, is his grasp of strategy and grasp of the rule book. oftentimes will have meetings with the TV broadcast and the stewards or the rules makers, especially ahead of special events. So let's use the Indy 8 Hour as an example. Normally, previously at least, the GT World Challenge America weekends were two 90-minute races. Now, all of a sudden, at the end of the year, you're running an 8-hour race. And it's a hybrid rule book between what we usually use in the States and what the European competitors are used to racing in GT World Challenge Europe. And it's somehow been melded together, which leads to sometimes the potential for some confusion. And we'll sit in these meetings, and Calvin will have this list of questions, this list of hypothetical scenarios. Well, if such and such a thing happens, how do you interpret that? And he'll turn it all on its head. And I think it's infuriating for the rules makers because, quite frankly, he knows the rules better than the people who wrote them sometimes. He's just that good, and his attention to detail is phenomenal. So I love working with Cal. Amanda's been a great addition as well down in the pit lane, and we've got a good bench, too. I mentioned Kyle Heyer, who we've had on some of the shows in the past. DJ Clark and Jonathan Grace as well have contributed in recent years and have brought their own expertise to the equation. And all in all, it's a really good group to work with. I enjoy it tremendously. But it's extra special to work with Cal because he's somebody I grew up watching, which I don't know that he likes to be reminded of because it puts the age gap in stark contrast, I suppose. But there's a reason he's had such a long career. He's a great person to work with, great friend off air, and a tremendous talent on air.
Absolutely. And talking about the GT World Challenge America as well, we were discussing the format change for this season. For this season, instead of two races, so one on the Saturday and then one on the Sunday, they've changed the format to just one 3-hour race. Do you think that'll help in a way with regards to cost, and do you think that'll help possibly with possibly attracting new entries, new teams, and just maybe it might provide if it does help provide more cars on an entry list? Do you think that'll produce maybe like great racing as well?
I think so. I think ultimately we'll find out when the entry list for Sonoma comes out here in a couple of months. But look, at the end of the day, the series had been attracting somewhere between 14, 15, and 20 cars for the last 3 or 4 years with the previous 90-minute 2 races a weekend format. And I think the powers that be, and this is me speaking from where I'm standing, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but my impression is that they were not content with that car count. They would like to see it more, and the decision was reached ultimately that without something changing, there was no reason to believe that there would be an increase in car count. So I give them credit for changing. I know they spent a lot of time walking around the paddock, polling teams, getting the input from team owners, and it's a really tough job because I know there were a few teams last year that absolutely did not want to see it change, but I also had multiple team owners come and tell me, I think this is a great decision. I love this format. So ultimately the proof will be, what does the entry list look like come April when we get to Sonoma to start a new season? I think from a broadcast perspective, it makes things a little more simple where you're not having to tell the same stories twice over the course of 2 90-minute races. Instead, you have one big race that everything is building towards. It feels like a culmination of the weekend, and it sets the top series apart from the support series a little bit where they just have the one big show, and that's what the whole weekend is building to. So on paper, I like it. Ultimately, I like anything that gives me more excitement to talk about. It makes my job easier. It makes my job more fun. And I hope that's what we found. I think there's reason to believe that could very well be the case. But, again, until we see the entry list, it's tough to say.
And then, obviously, going back to your commentating experience, I think you recently joined Formula E as a commentator back in, let me check again, 2024, if that's correct?
It is in a sense. I did a season, I'm trying to remember what year that would have been, 23 or 2, where I did all of the races remotely. So I was here in Indianapolis, or actually in some cases I was wherever I was covering other racing. So, for instance, I did I think it was the Romy Prix maybe from Long Beach. I was in the IndyCar radio booth at Long Beach in the middle of the night. I actually had to sleep in that booth in order to do that race, and then got off air from the race and wandered down into the pit lane and was on air for an IndyCar practice session or warm-up session about 15 or 20 minutes later, and that's a whole other story with a few little twists and turns in it. But anyway, that was one season of Formula E, and then I didn't do any the following year. And then I guess it must have been 24 that I came back on again. And all the races that go to CBS television here in the U.S., I have been calling for Formula E in that bespoke American broadcast, which is only about 6 or 7 races a year, but it fits nicely around the rest of my schedule, and it's something, again, a little bit different, and it's a challenge for that reason that I enjoy.
And talk about the commentating as well. Obviously, you've commentated on different disciplines, different series. Is there different approaches with regards to the way that you prepare for each race weekend? Obviously, say if you say like the endurance racing or sports car racing, you've got lots of experience doing that, and then maybe for example, you have to go and prepare for, say for example, Formula E. Is there a different approach to preparing for Formula E, for example? Obviously, that's an open wheel series, so maybe you have to think about the, obviously it's hard to explain, but is there a different mindset, if you like, with regards to the preparation?
I don't know that it is necessarily in preparation. I prepare largely the same. I guess the biggest difference in preparation across different series is simply the availability of information. So to use IMSA or Formula E, for example, there's a lot of information. The series provides quite a bit of it to me, and it's about sifting through that and putting into my notes the things I think are going to be most important, whereas in some of the lower SRO America series or some of the support series for IMSA, I'm really having to do all the digging myself to find information on the different drivers. So in that perspective, there's a little bit of a nuance to the preparation. I think the biggest difference in terms of comparing them is just in the style of the broadcast. The thing that really surprised me when I did Formula E as the lead broadcaster for the first time was how little time there is for storytelling. The races are so short. There's always stuff going on, especially with all the different quirks and gimmicks in Formula E racing, things like attack mode, for instance. You have very small windows to do any kind of storytelling during the race itself, which is totally different from a long-distance sports car race where you've got hours in some cases that, yes, what's happening on track does matter, but it's not of the utmost importance. And if you aren't talking about a pass that happens on camera, it's okay. You can finish the story that you're telling because you'll have plenty of time to reset the situation, and frankly, that position will probably change again later. So the way that you go into the race mentally is a little bit different across the different disciplines, but I think that's part of the challenge. That's part of the fun, getting to be involved in so many different types of racing. And as well, it's different going from radio to television and back and forth, and what you're doing for a TV network with lots of ad breaks that you have to get in and out of is different than doing a big long stream on YouTube, which a lot of the broadcasts are these days. So everyone has its different nuance, but by and large, it's the preparation mindset is largely the same, just with a few little tweaks here and there.
And yeah, going back to the sports car racing as well, say especially say a long distance race, say for example a 24-hour race. So, take for example the 24 hours of Daytona. You're commentating, and say if there's nothing going on, or the race is maybe say it's the middle of the night, for example, and it's all kind of just like quieting down. There's nothing going on. How do you fill that gap? How do you find things to talk about? Is it just, do you try and find things to talk about, or is that, as I like to call it, find things to fill the gap, or as I call it, a time filler?
Yeah, there's an element of that for sure. That really comes up if there's any kind of long yellow flag, or heaven forbid a red flag that you're trying to fill. That's where it gets really challenging, and we had a bunch of that at the Indy 8-hour this past year in 2025 with a lightning delay, and that was some of the hardest work I think we did all year, just trying to fill a couple of hours of delay. And then even when things got started again, it was primarily all under yellow for the last few hours. And that's where the preparation really helps, having anecdotes, having things to talk about. And then you rely pretty heavily on the pit reporters during that time, too, to go find people to talk to, find stories to tell. That when I am in the pits, if there is a long yellow or a red flag, that's when I think to myself, all right, now's my time to shine. I got to go find somebody to talk to and try and bail out the guys and gals up in the booth that are trying to guide us through all of this. So that's part of the challenge. And then, you just rely on the banter back and forth with the people you're working with. And I've been so lucky. By and large, the people I've worked with have had great relationships with. So, you talk about the Rolex. I go back to last year, and there was a point in the middle of the night when I was working with one of your countrymen, Peter Mackay.
Yeah, I know
Peter,
him.
yeah. I great guy, so well prepared. Just really, really enjoy working alongside him, and excited to get to work with him again here in a couple of weeks. But anyway, he accidentally referred to Jack Aitken as Jack Brembo, which then led to all these memes on social media, and we just kept joking about it through the night. And, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a 24-hour race, you can get a little bit goofy, and it's okay. And, you just look for the little things you can latch on to that are amusing and hopefully entertaining for the folks at home.
Yeah, and you talk about Peter as well. He's someone I've got a lot of experience of commentating with on iRacing. We used to commentate on a series called the Grand Prix Legends series, which is pretty much the Lotus 49, the old Formula One cars that they used back in the day. So going back to maybe round about the 1950s, 1960s sort of time. And I agree, Peter is such a great guy. I've got massive respect for him, and a lot of time for him, because he's just, when we worked together on iRacing, he's just one of those people who's so, I felt relaxed commentating alongside him. He's just got such a nice personality about him, and such a great guy. And just, yeah, if I would happily commentate alongside him on iRacing if the opportunity ever presents itself. But yeah, and that's what I like as well with the commentating as well. But obviously real life commentating is listening, and if there's nothing going on, you guys can kind of like joke about, have a bit of fun. They obviously you still have to take it serious, but also learn to have fun doing what you love at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you're not having fun, then no one watching you is going to have any fun either. I think at the end of the day, you've got to remember you're in a special privileged position to be able to do this job. And my philosophy has always been, if I'm not having fun, then what am I doing this for? So hopefully that comes through, and working with great people makes it all the more easy to convey just how cool of a job it is, and how much we're all just total nerds for this stuff. We love being there. We love talking about it. We love watching it, and sharing our passion with others.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'll stick with IMSA Radio as well. Obviously you joined the team at IMSA Radio last year. How did that opportunity present itself? Did John Hindhaugh, for example, did he come to you and say, would you be interested in joining us for the 2024 season? Obviously there was some stuff that happened in the background, but I won't go into it. But wait, how did it come about?
Well, it's something I've aspired to for a long time. I love IMSA. I enjoyed working at it when I was riding for Sports Car 365. Had great friends over there, and frankly, I hadn't spent much time in an IMSA paddock in a number of years. But I had a relationship with John Doonan, the president of IMSA, going back to his time with Mazda. Part of that was riding for 365, but also working for IndyCar Radio. Mazda was super involved with what was then known as the Mazda Road to Indy, which was at the time USF 2000 all the way up to what was then known as Indy Lights, now Indy Next. And I had many, many interviews with John over the years, and had built a relationship and had stayed in touch, made it clear not just to John, but also Nate Siebens, who's the director of PR for IMSA, and a few other folks within their leadership group, that if ever there was an opportunity, I would love to be involved in some capacity with IMSA Radio. The previous year, I had done a handful of races with NBC as a pit reporter, which was great. And actually, they had offered me an opportunity to come back and do some more races the following year, so 2025, as it would have been. And I was on the verge of signing that contract when I got a call from John Doonan, and he kind of laid out this opportunity. They had an opening. They asked if I was interested, and I explained, well, I'm pretty far down the road with NBC, but if you can put an offer together here in a short amount of time, I can pump the brakes on it for a little while at least. And ultimately, the offer was really good, and a big part of the appeal was the chance to work with IMSA Radio, which I had listened to for so many years, going back to Midweek Motorsport and Radio Le Mans, and then when during the ALMS days when John was calling those races, and it was such a big deal when they came back to the Rolex after being not on site and not covering that race for a few years. So just as a fan, I loved the product that they produced, and always had hoped for the chance to get to work with them, and that included working with folks like Jeremy Shaw and Shea Adam. And I have to say, I was quite disappointed to learn that I was going to be working with IMSA Radio, but not with those two, because again, those are two people that I really look up to. Jeremy has done so much for North American racing with the Team USA scholarship. I always thought he brought so much preparation to the IMSA Radio broadcast. And then again, Shea needs no introduction. She's a tremendous pit reporter. In my opinion, she is among the best pit reporters in any discipline going, and is the gold standard for sports car racing pit reporting. So I had always hoped to get the opportunity to work alongside them. Exactly what had transpired where things changed, I think it was different in both circumstances, but that had already transpired before John Doonan came to me with this offer. And so, the opportunity was there to come and do this thing, and it worked with the rest of my schedule. So I had to say yes. It was a really easy thing to do, and I have to say that the year totally lived up to every expectation that I had for it, and then some. It's such a great group to work with. Made some tremendous friends. I mean, we were talking about Peter a moment ago. I mean, I got done with working with him maybe the first day, and I felt like I had known him my whole life. We had that instant connection, and I feel like just a wonderful friendship now that hopefully comes across on air. And John and Eve have been great to work with, the whole team, Nick and Joe. And there'll be some new faces that I haven't worked with before down at Daytona this year that I'm excited to meet as well. So bittersweet from the standpoint of that I didn't get to work with some of the people that I really respect and admire, but very, very fortunate and thankful that I got the call and really enjoyed the opportunity. So looking forward to year number 2 getting started here shortly.
And also, you're at the Daytona this weekend. It's round 1 of the new VP, the new VP Sports Car Challenge season. Obviously, looking ahead to that, how do you think the new season for that's going to go? Do you think it? Obviously, last season, from my opinion, it was great racing, and do you think it? Obviously, it's going to be more of the same. Do you think there's going to be more? There's going to be more cars joining the grid this season?
I'm not sure on the car count side of things. I think it's 20 that have been announced so far for the season opener, and interestingly, no GTDX entries. So that was something that was new last year, the addition of GT3 cars. My understanding is they're still allowed, but there just wasn't the interest for whatever reason this year. So we're left with a format that's been tried and true with LMP3 and GSX, which is GT4. Making up the two classes. And it's a lot of new faces, I have to say, but has the potential to have some new stars start to emerge in the same way that, let's use Kiko Porto, for example, did last year in winning the GSX championship, and he's used that to help vault himself into Michelin Pilot Challenge for this upcoming season. I think it's going to be fun to watch for sure. I think one element of it that's very intriguing is the fact that there are the new LMP3 cars are eligible, but only a handful of them are in the field. And so they're up against the tried and true packages that have been running for the last half decade or more over here in what is now VP Challenge. And there's not going to be any BOP between them. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. And then the addition this year of some long distance races as well to complement these shorter sprint races, the two that we have at Daytona and on the average, the normal VP Challenge weekends, but then a few 2-hour races that also will see some new BMW machinery welcomed in a new touring car class alongside the LMP3s. I think that is a really interesting development there too. So a lot to be excited about, and again, perfect way to get it started. I love that there's a race on Roar Before the 24 weekend, a couple of them in fact, with these two VP Challenge races. And we've had such a growth in fan interest around the Roar in recent years, where the crowd is really quite strong, and to give them a couple of races in addition to all the testing from Pilot Challenge and WeatherTech, I think it's a perfect addition to the calendar and a great way to get 2026 underway.
And obviously you're back with the team at IMSA Radio for the new IMSA season. Looking ahead to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, are you? I believe you were there last year. I believe.
I was, yeah.
Is there any plans to? Obviously, is there any plans to come back over this year, or is it pretty much a wait and see thing?
Well, I would love to, first of all, and John and Eve from Radio Show Limited, they've been kind enough to offer. Unfortunately, there's an SRO America race that weekend, and I'm pretty well locked into doing all of those races. And, it's an exciting one, too. They're going back to Road Atlanta for the first time in a really long time. I love Road Atlanta, so that's pretty neat to get to go there. It's just a bummer that it conflicts with the biggest sports car race on the planet. And I so enjoyed getting to work Le Mans last year as a broadcaster. I'd been there once as a fan before and twice working for Sports Car 365, but I'd always hoped to work for Radio Le Mans eventually. And so that was really, really special last year. Enjoyed every minute of it. If for some reason the calendar shifts around, and these things do happen from time to time, and the offer still stands, I would love to take it up. But at the moment, it looks like that one I'm going to be watching and listening, perhaps more importantly, from afar.
Yeah, and obviously this year I'll be making my first trip across to Le Mans in June for the first time, which is it's something I'm really looking forward to. And actually, every time I speak about it, it makes me smile like a big kid, because it's one of those races that I've wanted to attend for a very long time. I was planning to attend last year, but just unfortunately, I lost my mother back in June, so that kind of went in the back foot. So, but it's kind of I decided this year that I really want to get across. It's whatever happens, I'm going, and I'm going. Thankfully, I'm going across with a couple of sim racing teammates that I've raced with or have raced with in the past, and looking forward to it, and then meeting up with the rest of the people, like the other people when we get there, and kind of set up a camp on the Tuesday, and then basically be there for practice on the first practice session on the Wednesday, and then basically, with it being a first time as well, obviously you've been there. Is there any advice that you would give for a first time visitor to Le Mans? Obviously, there's so much to do. There's so many places that you can watch, but the advice I got from people that have been there like loads of times, they've said like basically don't try and rush everything in. Just take your time and kind of just enjoy the experience.
Patience is required. It's a big crowd, and trying to get from one place to another is challenging, especially on race days. So if you're taking the tram or the bus from one part of the track, trying to get out to Indianapolis and Arnage, for example, it's going to take a little while. Be patient with it, but just soak it all in. It is so cool. It is such a special race. The history of the place is almost without parallel, and it means so much to the people taking part. It means so much to the local community. There's just not much else like it. The only thing I've attended that is of comparable magnitude is the Indy 500. I think those are the two races that stand above anything else, certainly that I've been to. and that are just a cut above. And I love them both. I love them both dearly. They're similar in a lot of ways, but different as well, and just so very special. So enjoy it. I think you'll have a blast. Go through the museum if you get the chance, and make the chance. Quite frankly, it's really cool to see some of the great cars of yesteryear that are on display, and it brings back a lot of great memories. But just soak it all in. It's a really special day to be there.
Yeah, and I've said to people, I said to a previous guest on the previous episode of this show that I was planning to, I was planning to spam social media with like pictures and there, and I kind of felt like bad in a way. I didn't because I don't want to annoy people, but they, she said to me that oh, don't worry about it. As you're there to enjoy the experience. Share as much as you want. Share the experience for people that are not there, and I'm looking forward to doing that because she's she's sort of the same with she's a big Porsche fan, big Kevin Estre fan as well.
Yeah.
She goes on all the time about Kevin Estre, and it's basically I always say I said at the time as well, basically like don't be ashamed of like sharing something you love or someone that you support, because it's for me sharing that sort of same experience with sports car racing, someone that's got the same passion for something that I enjoy as well. I always enjoy interacting with people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to be surrounded by 200, 300, 400,000 people, not sure what the official number is, that share that passion. And that's, again, part of what makes it so great. I mean, good luck trying to get the photos out. I don't know. My cell service, at least, it wasn't always the best. So you could try and post a bunch of photos, but you might not get them out until after the end of the race and you head home anyway. That's, I guess, part of just dealing with an event of that magnitude with so many people packed into the same place. But let me tell you, it is so special, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the experience.
Absolutely, and speaking of Le Mans as well, but I believe your father raced at Le Mans as well, and I apologise in advance if I get the name of the series wrong. I think it was the Mustang Challenge race, I think.
Spot on. You're exactly right. Yeah, that was so neat last year, and totally came out of left field. But Dad had been doing, I mean, he's been racing at the club level for, I don't know, a decade plus at this point in time. He'd been doing track days for quite a bit of time before that, and actually had gone through the Skip Barber School around the 2000 or 2001, I want to say, and had done a handful of Skip Barber single-seater races just on a whim back then. But then had been able to do some SRO TC America touring car races. The team he had driven with in a Mini here in the States was entering cars into Mustang Challenge, and had a driver effectively back out. They had a seat that was open. They had already committed to running two cars at Le Mans, and gave him a pretty good deal to go over and get to drive there, which is about as special as it gets. So in addition to getting to work the radio broadcast last year for the first time, I also got to stand in the pits and watch my dad race at Le Mans, and that is just an incredible sentence that brings a smile to my face every time I say it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as well. You've done a bit of racing as well in real life, I believe. I think was it towards the end of last year you took racing? Sorry, you took part in a race at Road America. Was it the? I'll need to check my notes quickly. But was it the? I think it was a Champ Car World Series or something like that, or is it not
Champ Car? Yeah, that's right. So it used to be Chump Car, which is actually more appropriate. It's the about as low level as you can go in club racing. No special license required. If you've got a driver's license and the safety gear, you're cleared to go. So you get out on track with some interesting folks who have a wide range of experience levels. Let's put it that way. Prior to that, though, I had done some Spec Miata racing in the States, but this was over a decade ago at this point. I really haven't done a whole lot in recent years. I'm usually pretty busy on a weekend throughout the summer and into the fall, and that's a good thing. Happy to be doing the stuff that I'm doing. But the opportunity opened up to jump in a Mini and run up at Road America. Dad was part of that team as well, a couple other friends. And it was so much fun. I had never driven a front-wheel drive car on a track before, but that car was hooked up. It was so fast, and we had a couple really good days. Learned a lot day one, and then won our class in day two, which was pretty special.
Yeah, and obviously racing with your dad as well, and you, like you say, you winning on day two. How did that feel to win alongside your dad? Was it again? Was that a special moment? A feel good moment? Uh, Maybe did it feel emotional as well? But getting to race alongside your dad and also win at the same time.
Yeah, it did. I mean, we've been lucky to race together quite a bit over the years. First in Miatas, and then well, really all in Miatas up until this race in this Mini, and so yeah, it's really cool to get to share the car with him, and then yes, to come out on top was really neat. I've been lucky to win one other time in an endurance race, and Dad was part of that lineup too. So I think maybe that's what it takes. I guess got to keep the two of us together, and I haven't been able to win on my own ever before. So I must still need Dad for something.
Absolutely, and also can't going back to the commentating topic as well. But obviously, I've done a bit of commentating on iRacing, like I mentioned earlier. But I would love to do a comment. I doubt I would ever get the chance, but I would love if the chance ever came about. I would love to try and do commentating in real life, mate. Just to see what it's like, just to see for the comparison between sim to real life, and then basically kind of as a comparison. But have you got any advice for someone that's maybe wanted to kind of like try and step up into real life commentating? Maybe they want to do it, but maybe they feel anxious or nervous and kind of like hesitant to try and make that kind of like step. What would your advice be for them?
Two things. Number one would be, quite frankly, there's no better way to learn than doing the sim racing. I wish that had been an option when I was coming up to get reps calling motorsports events. It is as close to one as you're going to get in terms of the skills that you're developing doing the job, and I think it will serve you really well if you've got experience doing it virtually. I think the biggest challenge is in real life you probably will have less information than you're used to, and from that perspective you're a little bit blind, I think, compared to what you're used to without as much of the data that you get in real time from a lot of the different applications in sim racing broadcasting these days. In terms of advice, I can only speak to my experience here in the States. I suspect this would be true in the UK as well, that your best bet is probably to talk to a local or a track of some description to see about helping out on public address and getting some practice that way. It's a great way to get started. Probably volunteering your time at the beginning. Maybe you do get paid a little bit, or they take care of your lunch or something like that, but it's probably not going to be a whole lot. But that's usually, in my experience, been kind of step number one. If you've got a resume that you can show them and a reel that you can show them with your sim racing work, then they kind of know what they're going to get when they give you a microphone, and then hopefully it's an opportunity that can pop up, and you can take advantage of it, and it can grow from there.
And talking about that as well, we obviously kind of like sometimes, yeah, basically, what would you say to someone that's maybe they've started commentating in real life, but they still get maybe like anxious or kind of like nerves before they go on air. Is that just a normal thing? Is it something that you get used to the more you do it? Obviously, the likes of yourself, Peter, John Hindhaugh, for example, you guys have been doing it for such a long time. Is it just every time you go in there, does it just come naturally to you, or is it just do you still get the little butterfly feeling from time to time?
Yeah, you get the butterfly still. I certainly did just this past weekend, getting ready for the start of the Formula E race. I hadn't done a live race in a while, and so I think that was part of it. And it's transitions from, I remember early on, it was more nervous and almost sick to your stomach, and now it's more butterflies of anticipation and excitement. I think a degree of that is good. It shows that you care, it shows that it matters, and that you're putting the correct amount of effort into it, and you're invested in it enough that if you're nervous that you want to do a good job. But I don't ever want it to entirely go away. I think you kind of thrive off of the adrenaline to some degree of a live broadcast. And certain races, I get more of it than others. I would say at Le Mans definitely had a sense of that, and Indy 500 for sure is the big one for me as an Indianapolis native. Every time I'm on air for the first time on that broadcast, it's you can feel the butterflies in the stomach, that's for sure. But I think over time you get used to the feeling and you almost embrace it. It's part of the process of getting ready to go. And then by the time the first sentence or two are out, you're just doing your job again, and you can put it in the rearview mirror and not really think about it again until you start your next show.
Yeah, I mean, it takes me back to like the previous episode of this podcast as well that I recorded last Friday with another guest, and I said before we started record, or before we went live, I said like, oh, I apologize if I start stuttering, like I said to yourself, because I never like to annoy people if I'm stuttering all the time. I don't want people thinking, oh, he sounds like such and such. Say, I won't go say like on here, but basically say he doesn't sound good, he doesn't sound right, he should get off or stop doing it. And basically the previous guests I had, they said like, oh, don't worry about it, it's basically if you stutter you stutter, or if you make a mistake you make a mistake. Just learn to relax, just learn to enjoy yourself.
That's it, exactly. You're going to make mistakes. It's a live broadcast. And actually, it's one of the things I love about being live. I get more nervous doing things to tape because I feel like there's an expectation of being perfect because you have the chance to go back and fix things. When it's live, it's out of your mouth. You've said it. It's over. You move on to the next thing. Don't dwell on it, right? Don't make one mistake become two. And just embrace the fact that nothing's ever going to be perfect in a live broadcast. It's the nature of it. And for me, I think that's part of the fun.
And then, yeah, that's the final point as well, talking about it, the previous episode that I recorded. I listened back to it the next day. Basically, I got sent over the video file and recording audio recording file as well. And I was listening, I was watching listening to the audio back just to see how it sounded, and kind of like and there was a mistake. I felt it was a mistake, and I felt I should have made the mistake. Basically, I was kind of naming the presenters from another podcast that I listened to, and I accidentally came out with instead of saying their name, I can't, because I didn't want to sound repetitive. I said like was it they people, and the day after I listened back to it, and I was kicking myself big time to the point it kind of affected me. I know I shouldn't, but it kind of affected me mentally because I felt just kind of like, I felt like really kind of like, I felt down in a way, and I felt like I let myself down. But maybe like I say, that's maybe just me beating myself up too much. And is it one of those things as well? But obviously, is it just one of those things you learn to deal with? Like basically, like you say, you're going to make mistakes. Is it just one of those things that you can't learn to deal with, and like basically as time goes on, you kind of just roll with it, and in a way you kind of like own that mistake. And I'll let you answer first.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, you never want to make mistakes. I hate when I do, but they do happen. I do as much work as I do on the front end with all my preparation to try and prevent those mistakes and minimize them. But again, if you're talking for hours on end, eventually you're going to slip up and say something that you didn't quite mean, or get a fact wrong here or there, or what have you. And the best thing you can do is kind of chuckle about it and move on. Be critical of yourself to the extent where, hey, was this preventable? If so, then what can I do differently to avoid this happening in the future? But at the end of the day, what's done is done, and you got to move on to the next thing. I remember I had a race, and there were two drivers with very similar names. I can't remember who they were exactly at the moment, but I got them mixed up. One of them at VIR had this terrible accident a few years before, and I thought that that's who was driving in this car, but it was actually the other guy with the similar name, and I was talking about what a great comeback story this is, and he's getting it done at this track where he has all these terrible memories, and then it occurred to me, oh no, this is the other guy. This isn't the guy who had the and all you can do is quick, correct yourself. Hey, sorry, I got my guys mixed up. That's on me, my mistake. Forget I said that, and then laugh at yourself and move on. And look, I was embarrassed, but you correct it and you're on to the next thing. And I think as long as you're upfront about, hey, I'm not perfect, I made a mistake, that's my bad, and I got the correct information out there eventually, then by and large the viewers and listeners are willing to forgive you.
Yeah, I mean, I we were my previous guest. We were chatting by chatting on Twitter. By basically we chat regularly on a regular basis, and I sent a message like the next day after listening back, and I said I feel really bad for like saying making that they people comment about your co-hosts, and I even held my hands up and said that if they listen and they're not happy about it, I am more than happy to go and like, basically send them a message and apologise, and just kind of like to stay on their good side, and what as a respect thing as well, because I'm one of those people. I never like to fall out with anyone or cause any trouble or cause any problems. It's something that I was always brought up with as well. That basically, if you feel you've done something wrong, like, and you feel like you should apologise, then apologise. Then it means that you keep yourself out of trouble. Maybe even though if you're not, you don't get into trouble. But it's more kind of like a better safe than sorry sort of deal.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think it's always better to get out in front of it, and so I try not to hide from the mistakes when they happen. I'll come out and say, "Yep, sorry, messed that one up," and then we move on. Don't dwell on it too much more than that.
And also, lastly as well, kind of like before we wrap up, looking ahead to the new season. Obviously, you're back with IMSA. You're back with SRO as well for GT World Challenge, GT4 America, TC America. Are you? I think I could be wrong. Are you planning to announce some Toyota GR Cup races, or is that more down? Is it DJ Clark and Kyle that's going to announce those races?
It won't be Kyle because he has moved on, as we were talking about him earlier, and he's really focused on what he's doing with grid life right now and seems to be loving that. My understanding is that DJ will be doing GR Cup, and maybe I'd be doing some of them as well. I ended up doing a few at the end of last year when Kyle moved on, but that's not been communicated with me yet. I'd love to do it. They're fun races, and I like working with DJ, another great guy and an up-and-comer in this business, I think, for sure. And then McLaren Trophy is another that I worked on those races last year, and we'll see if that holds true for the next year. I haven't heard about that for sure, but I'll definitely be back with SRO in some capacity. At least that's what they've told me, so I'm operating under that assumption. And then working those Formula E races that go to CBS, and then sprinkling in some IndyCar races, about 7 or 8 of them, I think, for IndyCar Radio this year, including the Indy 500. So all in all, it's about as good of a schedule as you could ask for. It's a shame about the conflict with Le Mans, because last year getting to go do Le Mans and then the Spa 24 as well a couple of weeks later, that really did make for the best calendar that I put together yet. But doesn't look like the calendars line up quite right this year, so we'll be focused more on what's going on here stateside, I think.
Fantastic. Well, Ryan, again, thank you so much for your time. You've been an absolute pleasure to chat with, and being an absolute legend as well. I look forward to listening to your stuff throughout the season, and when it comes to IndyCar, the IMSA Championship. Also SRO as well. Anything else that you're announcing as well. I look forward to it, and I thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the chance to come on and chat, and looking forward to chatting with you on social media here through the upcoming months.
I look forward to it as well, my friend, and you take care, and also enjoy Daytona and enjoy the Roar.
Oh, I will. No question about that.